I never imagined that a single traffic cone and one insufferable neighbor could ignite a full-blown suburban war. One that would end with roaring engines, local fame, and NASCAR on my front doorstep. But that's exactly how it all began. It was a crisp, quiet Tuesday morning. The kind of morning where the sunlight feels like a fresh start. I stepped out my front door, coffee in hand, keys jingling in my other palm, ready to face the day. But the moment I turned the corner of my porch, I stopped dead in my tracks. There it was, a bright orange construction cone, dead center in my driveway, sitting like some smug, glowing sentinel, daring me to question its presence. Beyond it, nearly kissing the bumper of my car, was a bulky SUV. Not mine, not anyone's, really, except Karen's. Her second SUV, to be precise, the one she didn't even drive. I blinked twice, once in disbelief. The second in hope that maybe I had entered some parallel universe where this was normal. But no, this was reality. And deep down, I already knew I was dealing with Karen. Karen, the self-appointed queen of Maple Ridge. The HOA dictator in heels. A woman whose voice could shatter glass and whose judgment weighed heavier than a Supreme Court ruling. The kind of person who once fined a neighbor's child for hopscotching on the community sidewalk. Yes, really. I approached her SUV, tapped on the tinted window. Nothing. Empty. So, suppressing the growing irritation in my chest, I walked over and knocked on her door. 3 polite raps, just enough to say, "I'm being civil." The door opened, and there she stood, arms crossed, smile smug, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. "Good morning," she said, sweet as poison. "Something wrong?" I gestured to the SUV. "Would you mind moving your car? I need to leave for work." She barely blinked. As per HOA subsection 4A2, she recited like a seasoned villain. Temporary vehicle displacement for neighborhood events is permitted. I glance around. No banners, no tables, no event, just an empty street and an SUV in my driveway. What event? I asked, exasperated. Karen's grin widened. "Oh," she said, turning slightly on her heels. "This is more of a proactive reservation. You weren't using it this morning, were you?" She closed the door before I could respond. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't just inconsiderate. This was strategic. This was Karen declaring war. And my driveway was her chosen battlefield. Maple Heights was supposed to be quiet. White fences, weekend barbecues, and neighbors who waved but kept to themselves. That illusion shattered the moment I realized who I was living across from. Eleanor, not Karen. Let's retire that cliche. Wasn't just any neighbor. She was a self-appointed monarch of the Maple Heights HOA. You'd know her by the click of her designer heels, her perfectly starched linen blazer, and the clipboard that never left her side. She didn't walk, she patrolled. Her reign was absolute, and her kingdom was measured in inches. Lawn height, mailbox color, even the angle of your blinds. I had heard whispers, stories about Eleanor fining a couple for putting out Halloween decorations 2 days early, or labeling a child's lemonade stand as an unlicensed commercial venture. Everyone in the neighborhood walked on eggshells, and I had just stepped into her line of fire, with a traffic cone and her unused SUV declaring war in my driveway. I stood there, coffee cooling in my hand, pulse starting to climb, as Eleanor leaned casually against her doorway. As per HOA subsection 4A2, she said, her voice like syrup over barbed wire. Temporary vehicle displacement for neighborhood events is permitted. I blinked. What neighborhood event? There were no balloons, no flyers, no children laughing in the distance. Just her SUV, parked inches from my garage, and a bright orange cone like some smug little monument to her authority. I asked her, firmly but politely, to move it. She smiled, closed the door. Just like that. I stood there, stunned, not just because she refused to move it, but because she could. She knew the bylaws inside and out, bending them like origami, twisting logic until it snapped. And the worst part? Everyone else just let her do it. I wasn't just up against a neighbor. I was up against a system she controlled with a clipboard and a smile. Later that week, I attended the monthly HOA meeting, hoping, naively, that someone might back me up. I brought photos, timestamps, even copies of the HOA bylaws. But the moment I mentioned Eleanor's name, the energy in the room shifted. Eyes dropped to papers. Coughs suddenly echoed off the walls. One neighbor actually stood up and pretended to take a phone call. It was like saying her name summoned a ghost no one wanted to confront. Eleanor didn't just enforce the rules. She was the rules. She built a paper-thin kingdom, reinforced by fear and laminated notices, and no one dared question her. That night, walking home under flickering street lamps, I realized something chilling. I was alone in this. The neighborhood hadn't just surrendered to her. They'd submitted. And unless I did something drastic, I'd be the next casualty in her campaign of suburban domination. The final straw came on a quiet Saturday morning. I stepped outside with a fresh cup of coffee, savoring the calm, only to find a massive red warning sticker slapped across my mailbox. In bold block letters, it read, "Violation, excessive mailbox height." My heart sank. This mailbox had been there for 6 years, installed by the previous owner, and no one had ever said a word. But now it was excessive. I peeled the sticker off slowly, hands shaking not from fear, but fury. This wasn't about rules anymore. It was personal. That afternoon, as I stared at my driveway, still bearing the faint yellow line she'd find me for, a thought struck me. If Eleanor could bend the rules to her whim, maybe I could bend the world around the rules. Not with anger, not with yelling, but with something so bold, so absurd, it would flip the power dynamic on its head. The gears started turning, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. That night, I sat in my garage with a notebook and a six-pack, sketching out the most ridiculous, over-the-top idea I could think of, and the more I wrote, the more perfect it became. I remember a news article I once read about a quiet neighborhood in Georgia that temporarily turned its street into a motorsports training area under a quirky city ordinance. It was legal, it was loud, and it worked. My pen flew across the page. Maple Ridge Grand Prix, HOA approved, but not really. If Eleanor wanted to weaponize bylaws and bureaucratic doublespeak, I'd answer with torque, rubber, and revving engines. It was poetic justice. Serve at 120 miles per hour. All I needed now was a motorsports club craze enough to go along with it, and a legal loophole wide enough to drive a race car through. I dove headfirst into city ordinances like a man possessed, zoning codes, recreational use clauses, municipal traffic diversions, you name it. That's when I found it. A dusty clause in the Urban Athletic Development Program allowing temporary public access events for specialized athletic training. With the right partner, paperwork, and just enough spin, I could legally classify a portion of our street as a temporary motorsport practice zone. I reached out to every motorsport club within a 200-mile radius. Most laughed, some hung up, but one, Thunderbolt Street Racing Academy, a small but legitimate training group, called me back. Their rep, Dylan, said, "Wait, you're serious? A cul-de-sac showdown to take down a tyrant HOA? Count us in." Suddenly, the gears were turning, and Eleanor had no idea she was about to get lapped. The permit came through on a cloudy Wednesday, stamped, signed, and sealed by the city planning department. For 48 glorious hours, our little stretch of suburbia will become an officially sanctioned motorsport practice zone. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the approval letter like it was a sword in the stone. This was it. I had done the impossible. While Eleanor was out harassing porch decorations and measuring hedge heights, I had quietly rearranged the chessboard. I didn't say a word to anyone, especially not her. Instead, I posted a single flyer on the community board. Maple Glen Motorsport Day, a city-approved community event. Come for the speed. Stay for the snacks. I sent digital copies to every household. No fanfare. No threats. Just calm confidence. And when Eleanor finally saw it, her face white as printer paper, I knew the countdown had begun. The morning of the event arrived with the quiet tension of a storm about to break. By 8 a.m., volunteers in reflective vests were placing safety cones along the street. Banners stretched across light poles. A folding table appeared with fresh-baked cookies, and 3 sleek motorsport cars rolled up, gleaming, humming ready. Then, the door across the street slammed open. Eleanor stepped out in a floral robe, clutching a mug like it held the last ounce of control she had left. Her expression? Pure disbelief. She watched, frozen, as one of the drivers, Mason, a grinning daredevil with a red racing stripe across his car, revved the engine. The sound shattered the morning like a firecracker in a cathedral. The first lap began, tires screeched, the crowd cheered, and Eleanor? She dropped her mug. It shattered at her feet, coffee splattering across her slippers. Her reign was over, and she knew it. By sunset, the race scars had done more than burn rubber. They'd burned through years of silent suffering. Neighbors who once tiptoed around HOA fines were now gathered with lawn chairs and lemonade, trading stories and laughing like old friends. The street wasn't just asphalt anymore. It was a symbol. The city, impressed by the turnout and the legal clarity, approved the club's request to paint bold white letters near my driveway. NASCAR practice zone. A gift, a warning, a monument. Eleanor? She tried one last protest with a cardboard sign and a fake fall that became a meme before nightfall. By the end of the week, she was stripped of her HOA title and reduced to just another quiet neighbor, avoiding eye contact, avoiding the street she used to rule. I sit on my porch now, coffee in hand, peace in my chest. No more fines. No more clip notes. Just the occasional visitor who asks, "You're the guy who turned the street into a racetrack, right?" I smile every time, because sometimes the only way to fix madness is to race right through it. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever had your own HOA Karen moment.